This is NHTV2, North Haven Government Television, a service of North Haven Community Television. The following program is brought to you through the support of the Town of North Haven.
Good evening. I'd like to call the Board of Fire Commission meeting together for Tuesday, September 22nd, 2020. I'd like everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So to the residents and taxpayers of the town of North Haven and other interested parties, due to Governor Ned Lamont's March 10, 2020 declaration of public health emergency and civil preparedness, emergency and subsequently issued Executive Orders 7D and 7D, and due to the spread of coronavirus, a disease, 2019 in the state of Connecticut, including New Haven County, in-person public access to this meeting will not be permitted. This will be a 100% electronic meeting. There will be no public comment. The public can access this meeting as follows. The meeting will be televised by North Haven Television, NHTV, available through Comcast, Xfinity subscribers on channel 20 and 1084, and Frontier subscribers on channel 6053. Dial in using your phone. Dial in number 1-929-205-6099. Access code 825-5404-4643. Password 463319. Having said that, I'd like to ask for the approval of the minutes from the Board of Fire Commission meeting dated July 28, 2020. Do I hear a second to the motion?
Second.
Any question on the motion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So moved. The Chief's report.
There's a second minutes, excuse me. There's a second minutes on there.
Thank you very much. There's also a motion that needs to be made for the special meeting held on August 6th, 2020. Do I hear a motion to accept? Do I hear a second? Any question on the motion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So moved. Thank you, Yvonne. The Chief's report.
Good evening, everybody. I'll start with the alarms. Year-to-date 2019, at this time, we were at 3,281 incidents. Year-to-date, as we are here today, we're at 3,510. It's an increase of 229 alarms. 2015, we're at 3,114, difference of 396 alarms. So as you'll hear me talk more in a few minutes, we can attribute some of that to the recent storms that we've had, although we've had storms like this similar in the past as well, so it's not too much of a skew in our numbers that we keep track of. Regarding the rest of the numbers I'll cover, this is going to reflect the time period since our last Board of Fire Commission meeting, which took place on July 28th, 2020. I don't have the number of times that we provided ALS transport or ALS assistant to the hospital. I'd ask the commission to allow me to report on that next month. We just recently transferred software, and the ability to run reports is not quite there yet. Since our last meeting, we went from a software that we've been using for the last 5 years. We transitioned to a different software system that allows us to be able to track these types of incidents and provide patient care reports to hospitals, and those reports just quite aren't available yet. They will be by the time we meet next.
Chief, will you consolidate this month and
Yeah, I'll make sure that when I give you the numbers that I actually show what took place for both. 24 incidents to the highway since our last meeting. Since our last meeting, there were 2 incidents in which we experienced a delay to a medical incident or a motor vehicle accident, and 3 others in which we had no units to send, and the ambulance company had to respond solo. Since our last meeting, 54% of our calls have been EMS in nature. And now we'll cover the overlapping incidents. So since our last meeting, 908 incidents, 438 of which were overlapping. I have an asterisk next to this. It covers 48% of overlapping calls. We can again attribute a large majority of overlapping calls to the two weather incidents we had, both the tropical storm and tornado. So I'd ask that 48% not really be factored into what we normally keep track of. It's a little bit skewed for this month. Again, this covers the increase of incidents for the tornado on 8/27 and the tropical storm on August 4th. The tornado accounted for about 97 incidents, and the tropical storm accounted for about 60 incidents, all within a short period of time, and therefore all jacking up that overlapping number. Regarding our current budget, so the budget for last year has been finalized. The fire department had a surplus of approximately $50,000. A lot of that can be attributed to the overtime line, which again, remember that we separated the overtime line from the contractual replacement staffing line. And so there was some leftover funding in the overtime line, the contractual replacement staffing line, and the full-time personnel line. This is due in large part to the fact, and I'd ask everybody to keep this in mind, that the contractual replacement staffing line covers the amount of vacation time, personal time, and so forth that the career staff accrues as they gain seniority in the department and in turn uses. And that contractual staffing line allows us to allow those members to take their allotted time off and cover their shifts accordingly so that we can maintain the same continuity of service with apparatus that we do every other day. With COVID taking place in March and travel restrictions in place and all the unknowns associated with COVID, the career staff did not take as much vacation time, and their vacation time runs the calendar year, whereas our fiscal year runs July to July. So while there was a shortage, we would have really been right on target had we been allowed to, had our staff been allowed to take time as they normally would. So while we're showing $50,000 in the surplus, I would expect that number to be right where we needed it to be had COVID not taken place. The only other thing to keep in mind as well on the full-time personnel line is that we've had a member that's been on active duty military leave the entire fiscal year, and so his entire salary is in that full-time personnel line. However, it's also increased the contractual replacement staffing line. The town is reimbursed somewhat for those expenses, but not entirely. Regarding the budget for where we are today, last year at this time was 18.3%, 19% as for this current fiscal year. So we're right on target again with our budget. Since our last commission meeting, the department has collected $20,056 in permit fees, bringing our total for this fiscal year to $38,072. Covered the fire marshal's office. Since our last meeting, we've had 78 inspections, 15 of which needed to be re-inspected for a total of 93. 9 different code violations were found. 22 code violations were corrected. Some of the things that have kept our fire marshal's office busy since we last had a meeting was conducting final inspections on the Divine Street property over where Yale occupies a few buildings. There are some construction taking place there to 2 of the floors. We've had a lot of illegal burning complaints following the tropical storm and tornado. So while our on-duty staff typically takes care of the initial complaints, when we start seeing recurring complaints, we do send a representative from the fire marshal's office to visit the property and have a conversation with the homeowner. I'd ask the viewing audience, the listening audience, to please take a look at the policy for controlled and contained fires, which is available on the town website. And within that policy is specific guidelines for what needs to take place for residents to be allowed to continue with using campfires and recreational burning. We do issue burn permits. It is not something that we do regularly. We probably issue a handful of them a year, and there are specific parameters that need to be met in order to be issued a burn permit, all of which can be found online. But we are seeing an increase of neighbor disputes and burning taking place in town. And so our fire marshal's office has began to get involved with several of those. Inspections at all of the schools prior to opening have occurred and continue to be ongoing with some follow-up at some different schools. We're working with the Board of Education on a couple of issues there. Occupancy postings are something that we're being asked to do quite a bit, whether it be in public places or whether it be in some private establishments. But if you look at the way that the governor's executive orders are written for businesses to remain open, it all has to do with the amount of capacity allowed by fire code. And so we're find ourselves heavily involved, serving as almost consultants for a lot of businesses that are asking about capacity and their ability to stay open to be in compliance with COVID. And one thing I also want to mention that continues to, the fire marshal's office continues to follow up on that I don't think gets a whole lot of credit on a month-to-month basis is recurring fire alarms. So prior to having a fire inspector on board for the last couple of years, a lot of these fire alarms, whether it be in some cases public buildings, but most of the time in some of these businesses in town, you'd have the same address coming in for fire alarms over and over and over again. Having the fire inspector allows us to send somebody from that office out, meet with the business owner, discuss what the needs are for the fire alarm, consult the business owner on terms of how to get that system back operating and functional as it was designed and minimize the false alarm. So that has had a direct impact on our call volume. The second that we start seeing an alarm becoming a recurring issue, we start putting the fire inspector's office on that almost immediately. Training since our last meeting has consisted of vehicle extrication. Thank you to Marola Motors for always making vehicles available to us whenever we have that need. I can't stress upon the public enough how imperative it is that when we do training for vehicle extrication that we actually use cars, a variety of makes and models and years, and that's something your establishment has always made available to us, and I thank you. Ground ladders are something that we've exercised with a lot since our last meeting. And one big component that is worthy of discussion is the EMD for our dispatch. So EMD is emergency medical dispatching. It is something that our staff have been heavily involved with the police department and with the dispatchers and the 911 center as we begin to transition back to providing EMD to the residents in North Haven as we once had and relinquished about 7-8 years ago. And so there's been a lot of emphasis on getting that program and that aspect of dispatch and the software that goes along with it back up and functioning. And we should be able to turn that switch on by the time that we meet again, our next meeting. And a few items for executive session, and that concludes my chief's report.
Any comments regarding the chief's report?
I would like 2 minutes to congratulate the department. And I have it now.
Absolutely.
I was monitoring the tornado/hurricane on my radio, and I congratulated the chiefs, the professional firefighters, and the volunteers for a tremendous job that was done. I followed it from the beginning to the end, and I salute every one of you. Job well done.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner, very well said. Any other comments regarding the chief's report? Along the lines of what the Commissioner just indicated, I certainly like to thank the volunteers and the CERT team for their involvement in the tornado and in the storm prior to the tornado. And again, thank you to Marola Motors for their effort. Your company's always willing to assist the fire department, and it's deeply appreciated on behalf of this commission. So thank you for that. I'll entertain a motion to accept the chief's report.
Move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Correspondence.
Correspondence, the only thing I have of note other than a regular day-to-day correspondence is I received a resignation letter from volunteer firefighter Sal Carlo, who was a volunteer with Northeast Company 4. He's accepted a full-time position as a career firefighter with the town of East Haven. It's worth noting that he is a third-generation firefighter. Both his father and his grandfather were career members of North Haven. It's unfortunate to see him have to go into the department, but we do wish him well, and I think his family's very proud of him.
Certainly has been a contributor to our town, not only Sal, but certainly his entire family. And we wish him well in his new position. And it just goes to show the kind of training and education that our volunteers receive here in our department, because many of the volunteers have moved on to full-time firefighter rank. So I'm very proud of that opportunity. Deputy Chief, thank you for overseeing the education for these and the training. Thank you. Discussion of unfinished business of the department.
A few things on your agenda. I'll start with the state of the fire apparatus, which I try to cover every time that we meet. We are going out to bid for the mechanical maintenance. It's a bid that has not been placed back out in about 3 years. We opted to renew it every year. It's due to go out, and it will be being published within the next 7 to 10 days, with the closing date for the bid about a week after. I have reached out to a few companies that provide fire apparatus maintenance, make them aware of the upcoming bid, and hoping for a competitive bid process to take place. Right on the heels of that, we'll be planning for our annual preventive maintenance to all of our apparatus. That includes the DOT road checks for the apparatus, as well as the annual pump testing. We always start with the older apparatus first to make sure that we have no surprises going into the next budget cycle. Our fleet currently consists, in terms of engines only right now, of a 6-year-old engine, an 8-year-old engine, a 16-year-old engine, a 20, 26, 29, and 33-year-old engines. So we do still have at least 3 at this point in time that are over 25 years old. I am expecting to relinquish at least one of those. I'm just waiting to find out based on this next round of pump testing and DOT checks. I don't want any surprises. I don't want to just go with automatically the oldest one or the second oldest one and then find out that something else is going to fail. So I will be determining over the next couple of months which of those makes the most sense to let go of, so that we do still maintain at least one reserve in our fleet, and that everything's operational. Regarding the Connecticut OEMS PSAR update, don't really have any new news on this. I reached out to the town attorney who represented us through this process as recently as this afternoon, an hour before this meeting. We still have not heard anything back from the state of Connecticut on the PSAR. As a refresher, the PSAR decision was in our favor by the state, and it was after a number of hearings. There was an appeal that was filed on February 26th, and the AMR again filed for a number of other motions thereafter. Make a long story short, we've been waiting since June 11th. Was the last time that we had any correspondence from the state. It was after denying AMR another request to open the hearing after it had already been closed, including the appeal had been closed. AMR again tried to open the hearing up. The state rejected that request. But again, that was on June 11th, and to date, we still don't have anything from the state of Connecticut. We're ready to go, no matter which way the appeal decision it goes, but there's a lot that we're waiting on right now. The other item I have on your agenda is the training facility behind us here at Washington Avenue. That bid is out for construction. The construction contractors all met for a mandatory bid walkthrough earlier this week, late last week, and there were 7 different contractors present for that meeting, which tells us there's some interest out there. That bid closes on September 23rd at 10 a.m., and I believe it was extended to allow for a couple others to submit their applications. Again, the intention with that is a 5-story building behind us that's going to have a high degree of versatility for our firefighters. We've been over some of the features in the past, and if you have any questions, please let me know. And that's all I have for unfinished business.
Any discussions with the chief regarding unfinished business? Chief, I just have one question regarding the age of the apparatus. I know in the past we've had a great deal of difficulty when the 33 and the 29 and the 26-year-old engines were laid up in the shop as far as getting parts, replacement parts are concerned. Do we still have a great deal of difficulty obtaining those parts, or do the mechanics still have that kind of problem?
Yeah, that issue is going to remain considering the age of the fleet. It's something that we struggle with. We struggle with not only obtaining parts, but we struggle with the frequency of repairs that are needed. It presents an operational concern when we have more than 2 engines that are out of service, because it takes up the one reserve that we have and something else in town. And anything beyond 2 apparatus being out of service starts really impacting our operations. So yes, with a 26, a 29, and a 33-year-old engine, it becomes troublesome sometimes to get parts and to cut down on the frequency of repairs that are needed.
And I know that we had applied for a grant and we haven't heard anything. Have you any idea as to whether or not that those grants are done and all have been allocated out, or are they still pending?
So at this point, we have not received any official word on the denial of the grant or the acceptance of the grant. This is our 3rd time putting in for this at the direction of this commission for the apparatus, and I don't believe at this point that we're going to be successful. We have not received a denial letter, but in my conversations with FEMA on some other grants that we're looking at, my understanding at this point is that all awards have been issued. Denial letter should be coming out shortly.
Well, thank you for the attempt, and we weren't optimistic to begin with.
Nope.
We were hopeful, considering we had a 33-year-old engine, and thinking that we would qualify as a result of that. But I'm sure there are other departments that have greater need than ours.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate that. Any other discussions regarding unfinished business? Hearing none, we'll move on to new business of the department.
Regarding new business, I just have an item on your agenda. It's a motion to upgrade career firefighter William Berry to grade B, effective August 10th, 2020. This is a contractual obligation.
With Commissioner Mulligan, please make that motion.
I make a motion to elevate firefighter William Berry to grade B, effective August 10th, 2020.
Do I hear a second to the motion? Is there any question on the motion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So moved. Go to the fire department.
I have one item on your agenda for you, and I just wanted to recap again, and I kind of figured this would happen. We'd already mentioned it a little bit, but I really wanted to make sure it ended up on the agenda. The efforts of the fire department as a whole, and I'm going to say fire department because at this point it doesn't matter whether you're a career or volunteer or what. The entire fire department stepped up, had damage done to their homes, had damage done to their families and their friends' homes, and still came to work and still put in hours and hours worth of calls for both the tropical storm and the tornado. Situations like that are things that you can't necessarily train for. We had a number of calls coming in, particularly for the tornado. Immediately following it, our 911 center was overwhelmed. I also want to just recognize the dispatchers at the 911 center. I don't think they get recognized enough, but the amount of calls that they fielded and had to go through and triage and determine what was a priority and what wasn't was really quite mind-boggling. And it was a collective effort of police, fire, and volunteers, career, it doesn't matter, that handle all these incidents. It's not just the initial calls that occur, it's everything that takes place afterwards, the following 48, 72 hours. And I just want to recognize the members of the department and members of the dispatching, as well as the police department for a job well done.
Well, Chief, as we're acknowledging jobs well done, as the Emergency Operations Director, you certainly orchestrated and coordinated the effort. And certainly, it's been a long time coming that our Emergency Operations Center was put into play. I know it's not totally done yet, but the truth of the matter is, it allowed you to have all of the decision makers in a room during the time of emergency to make those appropriate decisions. So, kudos to you in orchestrating and coordinating that and making sure that EOS Operations Center is up to snuff to handle these emergencies. And for all of our senior persons in the town that came to the Operations Center to make the appropriate decisions. Once again, thank you on behalf of this commission to all of our volunteers who helped the public, they helped each other, they just were wonderful in their effort, and we certainly thank them, and our paid staff and our CERT members. The CERT team has been called into play a number of times since they have been established, and I don't think they ever thought that they would be as
Sure.
busy as they have been, and we're blessed to have them. So thank you again to the CERT team. But again, Chief, thank you for organizing that and overseeing it and orchestrating it. I think the town was well protected, well served. We minimized loss of certainly life and injury. Property damage was the property damage caused by the storm, but we made sure that our residents were as safe as possible, and we checked on the seniors that were at risk. So I think a job well done for all of our public safety persons, both fire and police. So thank you on behalf of this commission. Having said that, I'll entertain a motion to move into executive session.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn from executive session.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. I'd like to reconvene the Tuesday, October 27th, the September 22nd, 2020 Irrigation Fire Commission meeting. Is there any further business coming before this commission? Any public comments? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jenny.
All right, thanks, bye.
Thank you, Jen.
The preceding program is brought to you in part through a grant from the town of North Haven. Watch town meetings or other videos on demand at nhtv.com.